Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Irvin, also known as Kobo Man. I don't know why I sound like William Shatner. I, I, I don't know. I think I'll leave this in the video. Doesn't matter. I wanted to talk about single sign-on, SSO, and the reason I want to talk about it because there's some issues with it, but generally speaking, it's great. So, what is single sign-on? Single sign-on allows you to use a single sign-on for multiple applications, websites, and etc. So if you, for example, go to any website that you don't have an account for, let's say you go to Indeed.com or you go to some other website that requires you to create a login or a profile for that website. So let's say this website is called, I don't know. Matter of fact, let's pretend it's my website, cosmicnovo.com, right? And let's change that to that. So let's say you go to cosmicnovo.com and you want to log into cosmicnovo.com. And then my website, instead of making you create a profile that's going to be stored locally, it will give you an option to use a Google account or Facebook account or something else. I can't think of other ones right now. But those are examples of what might happen if you go to a website like mine and it'll ask you and it'll say, well, you want to create a login for cosmicnovo.com? Well, you can just use your Google account or Facebook account to create it quickly. And that's an example of real world SSO login. However, in a business environment, there are issues with that. It works the same way, except there are issues when it comes to applications that are desktop based. So desktop applications like older version of Office 365, other proprietary and third-party applications will not be able to benefit from this unless they are later on updated and designed to use single sign-on. So what I'm going to talk about next is an implementation of single sign-on inside of a business and a problem, the biggest problem that it may cause when it comes to using SSO within a business environment. By the way, if you do go to cosmicnova.com, I don't have any kind of login because it's not that type of website. So I'm going to do this. So let's do a quick explanation of what single sign-on means in a business environment. A business will have a single sign-on typically for multiple websites. It's mostly used for website and cloud work, cloud-based everything. I mean, the cloud, using word cloud just means online, right? It just means online. That's what that means. It's not local. They call it cloud because it's, I don't know, somebody probably created an icon that looks like a cloud and he said, well, these are the servers. And, it was easy to explain to some higher ups, some bigwigs, right? That were trying to, get an understanding of what's going on with these websites. So we're going to create couple of, well, let's do some, maybe 3 or 4 looking websites. So we're going to pretend that these are different websites. Let's stick with 3. I'm going to color them differently just to make sure it's easy to understand and easy to follow. So let's say the website number 1 is, I don't know, called, well, let's not give them the names because I can't come up with names, but let's assume this is a website number 1 and it's used for accounting. So web 1 used for a contact. So it's a website within a business. And let's do this here. Business websites, or I should say websites used by the business. By the business. I'm going to do this. Websites used by the business. And there's a web 1. And then we're going to create another one, which is going to be called web 2. And this website is used by HR. Used by HR. I'm going to change the font to white. Same thing for this other one. Okay. And then we're going to create another one that's called web 3 and used for email. Why not? So my point is that you can have lots of different websites that will use a single sign-on. So what does that mean? It means that all websites will use a single sign-on ID and password. All websites will use a single sign-on ID and password. So what is that typically in a business environment? That would be your domain login / computer login. So whatever it is that you use for your computer. Typically in a business environment, all of this will be integrated. All of this will be integrated so that that way you only have one computer login ID, one login ID for websites, and one same password for all the other websites that are being used. And that's great because it makes it easier to follow, meaning that it's easier to keep track of different login IDs and passwords. It's harder to lose access to different websites that don't use single sign-on. And that brings me exactly to the next point, is that you will have a lot of websites, internal websites for the company, that do not use single sign-on. They're not created to use single sign-on. So yes, it's great for modern type of websites that can use single sign-on, but in the end you will still have some websites that use separate logins. And that's when users get confused. So if you're doing tech support and they are suddenly saying, I can't log into this website, well, they may be trying to use this single sign-on for that. However, they may have a different login ID for this new website, which we're going to create here. Here we go. We're going to spread this out a little bit. All right. So here comes along. Sorry, I'm trying to get this going here for you. Just a moment. Please bear with me. So suddenly you have this excuse me, website number 4. I'm going to make that one pretty teal color. I think that's teal color. And we're going to call it Web 4. And it's used for, I don't know, could be anything really. But let's say ticketing system, or let's just call it help desk, right? This is where you submit issues, computer issues, but it could be some other help desk. We don't know. And we're going to say does not use SSO. And that's a problem, right? That's a problem because suddenly users can't necessarily keep track of all of this. So you'll always have a break of some sort where you'll have either a website or an application that is not using SSO. So this is also true for things like Office. Now, if you're using Office 365, which you may be using Office 365, but then use a separate single sign-on, that's even more of an issue. So if you're switching over, if your company is switching over to using Office 365, then hopefully their whole system, their whole domain login and everything else is integrated with Office 365. Because if you have a server that is based, a domain server, meaning that this domain server is using, let me delete all of this here. I need to make space for more stuff here. Actually, let me do this. Bear with me. I'm still trying to figure things out on how to use this application for demonstration purposes. Okay, what I'm going to do is create a new one. Okay, so let's say your domain server here, big server, right? It's a big server. Domain server is providing login for your computer. This is what it does. It uses Active Directory AD for computer login. So Active Directory, that's part of the domain server, provides computer login ID and password for you to use. If this is an older server that's not, well, I mean, you can, it doesn't have to be older server, it could be a brand new server, but if it's not integrated with Office 365, for example, because Office 365 has its own Active Directory, it's called Azure Active Directory, it's not going to work with SSO, which causes a problem. So, must be integrated with Office 365 SSO. Let's say Azure Active Directory. So in order for SSO to work with this, it has to be integrated. I mean, yeah, I don't know. You might have a weird company that you work for that doesn't want to do this, which is fine. But why would you not want to? Because it makes things simple. And if you're not integrated, then you come across an issue where you would have just regular Office suite. Regular Office suite that uses, for example, let's do this here. Let's say this is Outlook. Outlook, and it's not. I'm going to call it Old Outlook. Old Outlook. No SSO. This Old Outlook will be using what we talked about previously, which is the old server domain login. So it's not going to be SSO. However, if you have other websites that use SSO, then this old Outlook is going to be using that domain that I just talked about, that Active Directory domain login. So when you change your SSO password, your domain password is going to stay separate. And that will cause issues. It could cause issues even with integration of SSO with old type of domain, which can happen. So when I talked about Office 365, only because Office 365 is the newest product and it uses SSO. The old server that I talked about just now can also be set up to use SSO for other websites that we talked about initially. So the first 3 websites that I talked about, they can all be made to use the old server. They can all be used to use the old server and set up SSO like that. However, there's another issue here. And I really hope I'm explaining this in a way where it's easy to kind of understand. That last thing that I showed you wasn't super explained, but here's a problem that I'm going to talk about here. Let's say you go to a website that, let's say everything is using SSO. Everything is using SSO, and then you've got this website that uses SSO, and your password expires, SSO website. Let's say the password expires and everything is using SSO, including your computer login, which is your domain login, and everything else. This SSO website will prompt for password change. Password change. Will prompt for password change. Let's say your password expired, or it tells you you have 5 days to change your password. So I'm going to say I.E in this example, password expired or soon expires. And it gives you an option to change that password. It gives you an option to change that password. So you go ahead and do it, right? You go ahead and you do it. You end up changing the password. You change the password on the website. You change the password on the website. Okay? Now you've left this website. You've left the website and suddenly you go back to your Outlook. Outlook is a desktop application. Desktop application. It was already opened. This was already opened when you changed your password, which is here. You've changed your password on the website. Now the websites are, okay, fine, you have changed the password. Now websites are working fine. However, the password hasn't been updated locally at the desktop level. I'm going to say here because it was already open, not updated. Not updated. I'm going to say password is not updated because it was already open. Outlook was already open. And then suddenly you either lose connection to Outlook, you're no longer receiving emails because there is authentication issue. Authentication issue. Authentication issue. So now, to fix this, you have to close Outlook and reopen it, and then might ask you, you might get that pop-up that asks you to put in the password so you can log in, which you shouldn't be getting. You should not be getting that pop-up at all, because once you log into Outlook and it uses your domain credentials, which in this situation we're pretending like domain is also integrated with SSO. Everything is SSO, as I mentioned. But the Outlook is holding on to the old password until you close it and reopen it, and it will ask you for the password. Why? Because it hasn't replicated at local level yet. You've changed the password at the website level only. Remember, we talked about this. The password is changed, the SSO changed for website level only. You have not done a domain, typical domain password change is when you do Alt Control Delete on your computer and it gives you that window to change the password. Alt Control Delete. This is how you normally change the password. You know, you get that window and you click change password, right? Or it forces you to change the password at some point. That's the normal way. And once you do it like that, Alt Control Delete is obviously at local level on your computer. That's local. Once you do it locally, and if it's an SSO password, it's going to replicate at local level when you open up Outlook. Now Outlook suddenly is not going to ask you for your password because it knows the new password that was saved locally at local level. This is why Outlook breaks with this situation. Of course, it's not only Outlook that uses these passwords. You could have, I don't know, some kind of instant messenger that uses SSO for your company. Any other applications that uses SSO for your company is going to be affected by this. So you have to update the password manually, regardless the fact that it's SSO. So when a user tells you, I'm having problems logging into things, I get these pop-ups, there are issues with my computer, I can't log in, then look up their login ID if you have the ability to look it up in Active Directory and see if they changed their password recently, and chances are they have. And then ask them, where did you change your password? And then chances are they will say that they changed it on the SSO website. So how do you fix this? Well, you simply close all the applications that they're using, everything. The best thing is to reboot, right? You don't have to reboot, but you can close the application, close Outlook, close all the websites, and then lock the computer and just unlock it using the new SSO password. This will replicate at local level. I hope this was easy to follow. I'm still learning how to do presentations like this where I'm live kind of trying to draw and put things in perspective. I don't have a plan, guys. This is just me literally deciding to talk about SSO. And I'm just a guy who shares his knowledge. I'm not a professional teacher or anything like that. So I'm just basically thinking out loud and thinking in a way where hopefully it's easy to understand for people that are new to IT and people who currently work IT, because I know a lot of people on my main channel watch my videos are already working IT. And I kind of try to present it in that way. Please let me know if you like this video in the comment below. I appreciate a like because I'm putting this on my second channel, and I hope to get it to the point where it has at least 1,000 subscribers. I know we'll get there eventually, and people who follow me are subscribed, and that came from my first channel, from my main channel, which is always appreciated. You guys are the best. I'm serious about that. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day and take care. Bye bye.